Do you feel that a lot of what we're dealing with issues of, let's say, depression, chronic disease, are in some ways that we're forgetting the lessons taught to us from the ancients of connecting with nature, of mind body medicine instead of just body biochemical medicine? Is that part of the issue that you're trying to solve?
Absolutely. I think we are in some way forgetting, or we did forget them, and we are now rediscovering them through science and through medicine. And surprisingly enough, the ancient methods were themselves very scientific. When I went to Shaolin and I learned how methods were developed, it was absolutely kind of a scientific approach where a bunch of monks will test on themselves different practices for decades and document the impact of these practices and then make adjustments. No, this we're going to get rid of it because it's not working. And oh, this had a surprising positive effect. Let's delve deeper into this. So, as I mentioned, this rediscovery, it's in my way, in my opinion, very powerful, and it's in many facets of well-being. You mentioned mental health and physical health, but it even goes so far as daily, let's say, practices like fitness. If you think of Western fitness, it tends to be quite monothematic, at least until recently. People either did cardio and they were running every morning, or they were, bodybuilding and then weightlifting and so on. Very often, men will gravitate more towards these muscle practices and women towards the keep slim cardio practices. And again, going back to what the ancients tried and tested on themselves was there are texts mentioning how true physical well-being and longevity has to come from a kind of triumvirate of practices, which are mobility and flexibility. Because
Mhm.
as we get older, we get stiffer. They use these metaphors of like a young green plant and a dry stick.
Mhm.
Um, Cardiovascular health, so aerobic training, because our cardiovascular system needs to be kept active and energetic and efficient. And muscular health, to prevent what, again, with metaphors, they called it the decaying fruit. But we call it now sarcopenia, but it's the same thing. It's a kind of ripened fruit which becomes soft and doesn't have any tension anymore. So again, here a little example of how this combination of trial and error and scientific approach in a primordial way led us to find the same things that we are now rediscovering through scientific research. And I think that there is a lot of beauty in that, and there is a lot of beauty in rediscovering some of these old methods on how to more than cure, prevent the onset of issues.
One of the things that comes up when people talk about this idea of living a healthy life, a balanced life, one of, mind, body, spirit, is the idea of the time they have to do so. One may point to, well, I don't have time to train in the Shaolin monk ways and devote myself to such things. I have a 9 to 5, family, mortgages, all these things that people get bogged down in their modern day life. How do you take what you dedicated yourself and start to apply it to the average person that lives in this very, you could say, busy modern world?
Frankly, first of all, modern technology offers us ample tools to be able to do these type of things in a very effective and also time effective way. But if we want to hyper simplify the habits, so without even mentioning now apps and all kinds of other tools that we have at our disposal to track and adjust our habits and our behaviors, um, let's use the example of movement, because it's a classic example where people say, I have no time to train, or at least to train as holistically as I perhaps should. Well, first of all, let's go high level. If you go to a gym and you observe somebody in the gym who is there for usually more than an hour because they made the effort to go to the gym, between scrolling on their phone, chatting with the person on the machine next to them, checking themselves in the mirror, waiting for some equipment to be available, the real training time is perhaps 20 minutes. And that means that you could probably do 20 minutes of very intense training, and
Mhm.
you will obtain quite similar results to this huge time investment, which is very dispersive. But let's get even smaller, because habit forming starts usually with very small commitment. I think everybody, no matter how busy their lives, can commit 1 minute at the beginning of every hour, from when they wake up to when they go to sleep, to doing some kind of physical activity. And let's imagine that today's choice of physical activity is squats, standing up and down from your chair. In a minute, you can probably do around 30 quite easily. Okay. So if you are at work, for example, for 10 hours, that's 300 squats. That's a reasonable legs workout. You are not going to get, deficiencies in your leg muscles if you're doing 300 body weight squats a day. And that's just 1 minute at the end of every hour. That's training from 8:59 to 9, from 9:59 to 10, and so on. So this is just an example on how I think that all practices, first of all, they can be distilled in small pills. They don't have to be a huge amount of time investment. And secondly, they can be interspersed throughout our daily life in a very organic way. It doesn't have to be this, block where now I invest, 2 or 3 hours of time to do my practices. In fact, I think that sometimes that becomes a little bit overwhelming and it seldom leads to a long lasting practice.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, most of us, spend our times, at work or at the gym somewhat inefficiently. I saw a stat that we work, truly work about 2 hours and 30 minutes or so out of an 8 hour work day. And like you said, it's water cooler talk, it's walking around, checking online, going through emails that really aren't work, other things, and looking at the internet and social media.